that we are facing two-phase transparency. From one side, the utopia of openness, and the other, a dystopia of monitoring. I think somehow in all of your presentation, this aspect came out. So, yeah, I would like to ask you to comment on what the others say, and then we will leave the question to the public. Jake, you want to say?
Sure. I think that what Ananops was saying about spying and how there isn't exactly equality with that spying is something that we should all take very seriously. The idea, for example, that you can go to prison for years and years and years for spying on people who right now spy on us with impunity is quite serious. The fact there isn't a kind of equality in this, I think, is quite serious and quite scary, especially considering how secrecy breeds more secrecy. I mean, it isn't even the case that it's a conspiracy theory. It's a business model. And this surveillance technology that exists all over the world, especially here in Europe. And thanks to the Chaos Computer Club, especially people like Frank Rieger, fighting against censorship has been a real possibility here, and it's been quite positive. I don't think we've been as lucky in the United States, but I think that it's very important to recognize that while we might not have anything to fear from being wiretapped directly on an individual basis, there is actually a great threat to society. I mean, I feel like as an American, we sort of only learn about the East German state terror through movies. But I think that that's a real serious concern for a lot of people. And when Anonymous did actions, as Biela said, in Tunisia, I mean, it made a huge impact. I went to Tunisia with some other tour developers a couple of months ago, and someone said, but isn't anonymity going to be used by bad people on the internet? And what about that block page? It's very good. And so we asked, who here has ever seen the block page? And every person, including the person that asked that question, raised their hand. And I said, well, yes, what about you guys? I said, it's you. It's every single one of you. And it was the case that people in just a university, they were just actually all aware of Anonymous as a group. People who had no connection to the internet other than that at all were so happy to see that people had risen up and had actually resisted their totalitarian dictatorship and had helped to overthrow it. Just total strangers from the internet that like to put ASCII dicks all over everything. I mean, that's a pretty interesting difference between the Islamic culture of Tunisia and the internet, and yet they found common points of unity. That's pretty incredible. And so this person here and Biela's anthropology studies, I think really underscores some really positive points that Anonymous has contributed to.
Gabriele?
I'll keep it brief because I'm actually, interested in people's questions. I think one of the things about Anonymous is that it's got this political side about leaking, gaining access. It's got a longer kind of history of genealogy, and Jake really gave us a window into this. But as an anthropologist who has actually spent a lot of time talking to Anons, meeting just a handful, I have to say I'm often very, very floored and amazed by the fact that they don't seek personal recognition or fame. And there's nothing, wrong with seeking credit, right? And yet, as a kind of culture across the West, perhaps there's too much emphasis on that, and that also, has certain consequences for things like capitalism, social interaction, and to me, Anonymous really acts as this very interesting oasis, which does sort of parlay a different vision of what sociality looks like without the need for seeking recognition and fame. And again, this is kind of personal, but I'm quite floored by that. It's an important message to take away from the collective.
And Anonios, you want to comment what Gabriele and Jake just said?
Yes, I think I agree with Jake that spying is it's very serious. We have to find a way to stop it. We have to find a way to keep our governments honest. And I want to see a more free world. I want to see us get along. I want to see I want to see governments held to account. And whatever that takes, denial of service, whatever, activism, let's get it done.
Thanks. I think now we have really this special situation with a lot of crowd behind us and also in front of us, and I really think it's the moment of the question of the public. So you can choose who you want to ask the question. There are questions. I can see.
There's somebody in the far back.
Hello. I would like to ask a question to whoever wants to answer. So I don't know. I'm not addressing specifically to anyone. There is something that bothers me a little bit with this anonymous group. Something I don't really understand exactly, because you said that there's not a background of politically or philosophically ideology behind Anonymous. Yet at the same time, you are perceiving a quest of somehow fighting for freedom or fighting for the public, for the people. And if I understand right, your goal is to achieve freedom. You just said that. I mean, I'm addressing now to our guest. Freedom is something that, for me, without any philosophical background or political background or political orientation, it sounds to me personally very related to somehow an extreme right-wing politics. Because freedom is freedom of doing whatever you want, deregulation, actually freedom of free market and so on and so on. If freedom is the only goal of Anonymous, then it sounds to my ears, I might be wrong, but quite right-wing, quite extreme liberalism, which it's not what it is, because I'm quite sure that Anonymous fight for the right of the people. I mean, that is what it looks to me, right of freedom of speech, right of using the internet for everybody, for the poor and not only for the rich, and so on and so on. So how do you, my question is actually, how do you manage not to have a political vision or a philosophical background in your group, and at the same time carry on such activities that looks very, actually also left-wings oriented somehow. So this is actually my question. How do you deal with the absence of a philosophical and political background? Thank you for that.
Why don't you start? I definitely have some thoughts, but why don't you go ahead and start?
Nice sweatshirt.
Everyone loves your sweatshirt. Do you want to respond to Nani-Ops?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, we do have political leanings, but the thing is, Anonymous is a group of groups. There's many political, many philosophies represented, and I'm just one person. I don't want to speak for the whole, and a lot of others don't either. I don't want to endorse a political candidate, for instance, because you know, I value my own opinion, but I'm very reluctant to back a political candidate. I don't know, I'm just against it. But I think we want freedom, but it's not just blanket freedom. We want freedom from oppression, freedom from tyranny, freedom from government reprisals. You ask Jake how he feels about every time he comes into the United States, getting probed by the TSA, the DHS, having his equipment taken. Is that freedom? I mean, I would say that's a kind of tyranny that he's subjected to unofficially, because they don't charge him with anything. They just harass the shit out of him.
No, I would like also to say that it's also, of course, difficult just to give for granted things in this kind of panel, because as Anonymous say, nobody's representing anyone. I mean, and also we can see on the chart over there that many people are actually playing and having fun. So I think also this double component of politics and the lulls is probably really important, and is also what characterizes Anonymous as an entity, I would say. So probably we should see the aspect from many angles.
I mean, I know with my general work on computer hackers and Anonymous, which obviously is not all about hacking, but somewhat comes out of this world, a lot of it is culturally liberal in the sense that there's commitments to privacy and free speech. And this liberalism, you know, has been the bane of my academic existence, because I've had to kind of theorize and talk about it. It exists from a kind of left spectrum to a right spectrum and can be incarnated in many different ways. And it is absolutely existent in Anonymous as a kind of cultural commitment, not necessarily an explicit philosophical program. But